Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of Drinking from the Fire Hose. I'm Murray McMillan, and as usual, I'm co-presenting with Roger Wilcox. So actually, without further ado, I'm going to pass it straight over to Roger to introduce us to this week's topic.
Thanks very much, Murray. Hi, everyone. Well, this 10-minute video is aimed at equipping managers to improve their team's performance. And the focus of this video is on developing effective behaviors in people to enhance the effectiveness of new technology solutions. We're going to give you some practical tips on how to do that. And at the end of the video, as usual, we'll leave you with an activation, enabling you to immediately put into practice what you've heard. So what is the connection between new technology solutions and developing effective behaviors in teams? Well, firstly, if you focus on people's habits and behaviors, not just the tool that you're implementing, you're more likely to deliver the expected business value. It's widely quoted that up to 70% of technology implementations fail to deliver the expected business value. Now, what I believe from my personal experience is that one of the main reasons for this is that the implementation team and the leaders who will be using the tools fail to focus sufficiently on the required habits and behaviors. When your implementation program includes a focus on the required habits and behaviors, you look beyond the use of the tool. You also look at how the tool fits into other processes and ways of working. You identify the complementary changes which need to be made to make the use of the tool more effective. You engage your workforce and you maximize the benefits achieved from the new technology. Your team become part of the solution, and without an engaged workforce, new technology will not deliver the expected results. So let's go over to Murray, who can take us through how to assess the current performance.
Okay, thanks for that, Roger. Yeah, so from a current performance point of view, if you're currently going through the introduction of some new technology or the implementation of some new technology, have you actually undertaken any of the work that Roger's talking about? Have you had some sort of workshop or some sort of input to develop or identify these habits and behaviours? Roger's already pointed out how valuable that is. So is it something you've done, or is it something potentially you would look at doing in the future? Likewise, if you've implemented some new technology recently, how effectively is it being used? Is it being used the way you originally intended, and are you getting the expected results? Or are you starting to see a little bit of mission creep? Are things changing a little bit from how it was originally intended? I know a personal example for me is the use of Zoom or Teams, which we've all been using for the last year, and is becoming fairly normal. I've actually been in so many video calls over recent months where people will switch off the video element of it, which sort of defeats the purpose. And people have various reasons for doing that. But it's an example where maybe things are just creeping a little bit away from that original intended use. So are you seeing anything like that where it's changing? And obviously, is it something that you can tackle? Linked to that is, have you identified any other areas where you think some innovative technology would help? Again, given the current climate where we're all working remotely and things are very different, is there anything else that you've identified that you think would help? And my final point, just linking into that previous one as well, is, are you actively engaging with people, the suppliers or the innovators that develop this sort of technology, or are you just waiting to see what pops up, or are you actually engaging with them? Okay, Roger, back to you.
Yeah, I think it's a really important one, that last one as well, about engaging. Are you engaging? But it also asks the question, if you've got a vendor or somebody who's coming to talk about new technology, are they just focusing in on the tool, or are they also talking about habits and behaviors? Do they understand the importance of the people side of things? Do they understand the interaction with processes and current ways of working? So yeah, I'd add to that as well. So yeah, the key thing we're going to focus on now is how to achieve the goal. So I split this into two phases. Firstly, the pre-implementation phase, and then secondly, the post-implementation phase. So let's just start off at that pre-implementation phase. One question, do you involve the workforce right up front in the design stage? The benefit of doing that is you actually make them part of the solution. And oftentimes you may be familiar with a change curve where people are resistant to change, and then they accept it, and then they actually improve and actually deliver what they're expected to do. Well, sometimes actually involving people right up front helps get over that resistance, overcome the resistance, and help them be part of the solution. Secondly, I'd strongly recommend that you hold a habits and behaviors workshop. So Murray mentioned that before, but the best way of doing this is to bring together people who will be using the technology with the design team. So get those people who are practitioners, get them in the same room with your design team and specifically focus on habits and behaviors. So what do you want to embed when this tool is actually implemented? What are the blockers? What other things need to change, such as the business processes and current ways of working? And it's amazing what actually comes out of those workshops. But you'll need to really take a record of those, because when we get to the post-implementation phase, this is one of the things you'll need to follow up on and make sure that you're really following up on the actions. One of the things I like to do is work with leaders to understand how their personal habits and behaviors will need to change. A positive outcome of this is that once you actually start that conversation, it actually helps them really get committed to the new technology that they're wanting to be implemented, helps them understand the technology. And if they understand at this early stage what their habits and behaviors are, then when the product is implemented, if the tool is implemented in the future, then they'll be able to follow up on go, see, and assesses and really understand how to, what good should look like. They'll understand what the habits and behaviors should look like of their teams using the tool. Finally, in the pre-implementation phase, don't lose sight of communication and training. We won't dwell on this area in this video, as most teams are aware of this and tend to do an okay job at both comms and training, but you mustn't forget that. So over to you, Murray. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, only one thing I would add, I think, to the pre-implementation phase, Roger, and I think it's getting the team involved from the very outset. Get them as part of the design, so they feel they're engaged and they're a part of what you're trying to introduce. And I think at the same time, be very, very honest about why you're introducing this new technology. And part of the reason I'm saying that is so many times I've seen it where if you're not very upfront and very engaging at that stage, people will almost invent other reasons why you're implementing it, and therefore it gives them an opportunity to put up barriers. A simple example of that I've seen actually many times in the past is where you've got collaboration between onshore and offshore with like a collaboration room. You've got live video between the control room and the office onshore. It's a phenomenal resource, and it's now widely used across most operators. But many times I've been involved at the outset, and the control rooms hate it, because obviously the purpose for doing that is to spy on them and catch them out and pick fault. It's not the reason at all. But if you don't engage them and have them as part of the solution, they'll come up with reasons why it's something that's going to make life worse for them. Actually, it's a very, very useful technology, and everybody loves it once it's in there and it's embedded. But you run the risk at the outset, they'll put up barriers and they'll fight you for it, which isn't helpful. Moving on to the post-implementation. So that, I mean, we've already mentioned the coaching support in there for changing the habits and behaviours. That's something that is ongoing. And again, I think something that I've seen that works really well there is use some of your internal team to become champions for this, or super users. Have them as part of that, both for the technology and for the behaviours and the habits. So don't forget, there's usually good support for technology. Make sure you're supporting the behaviours and habits in there as well. And as Roger, as you mentioned, they're extremely important for the leaders. They ought to be leading by example, using this technology and embracing it. And I guess tied into that for the leaders, the usual go, see, and assess. Be part of it. Be part of using that technology. Genuinely part of it. But understand how it's being used and perhaps where it's falling down a little bit. How can we improve it further? My final one in this is just reviewing. So something that will come out of that workshop are boundaries and rules of engagement. Highly recommend that you review this on a regular basis. So make sure that those boundaries that you've agreed are working and are still the correct ones, or do you need to alter them slightly? So back over to you, Roger.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I know we're just coming up on our 10-minute limit. So I guess, as we said at the outset, what we'd like to leave you with is an activation. So the activation is go and see, go and test your current technology implementation if you've got one ongoing, and say, have you included habits and behaviors? If you've already implemented one, perhaps do a go, see, and assess, as Murray said. So back over to you, Murray, just for a final closeout.
Yep, I think as always with the final part is go and do it. Try these workshops, embrace the habits and behaviours, see how it's working, and as always, we would love to hear how you're getting on with it.